Hey guys, welcome to Mindset Body Bank. Rob Palante here, and I got a very special guest for you guys today, Mike Futa, an old friend of mine. We played a little junior against each other, and he was kind enough in between his travels to jump on here today and spend a little bit of time. Mike's got a great story, and I'm hoping he's going to be able to share a little bit about his past, where he's been, his road to success, where he's at now. So Mike, welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Absolute pleasure, Rob. Thanks for having me.
It's awesome. So, typically what I like to do, Mike, is start out a little bit about when I'm interviewing my guests, tell us a little bit about what you're doing now. And then we'll do a little bit of a deeper dive into your past and share that journey to, your road to the NHL, which was a little bit different, being, a player and then winding up in management. And that's kind of an exciting way to get there, but I'll let you kind of take it from there.
It's a different path for sure, but I mean, right now I'm transitioning as well. I mean, the last 13 years, or 14 years, I guess it's been. I started out as a director of amateur scouting for the Los Angeles Kings, and then I was promoted to vice president of hockey operations and assistant general manager. And I had a year left on my contract, club option, just prior to the COVID break. And I was actually back in Canada traveling to see my daughters because the borders were starting to shut. And I received a call from Rob Blake that they weren't going to pick up my option. Probably the lowest moment I've had in sports. It just because you're kind of, not only are you dealing with the outside forces of the thing, but it just kind of hits you right between the eyes. And I've had a lot of great successes. And I think that's part of, what we're going to get to talk about. And I guess even with your mindset in your body banks, it's that ability to, when you're down, that's when you got to really show your true colors. And it's been a tough time. Everybody, like Brian Burke immediately said, I'm going to be unemployed as long as I want to be unemployed. And that's really good when you have all these people calling you and telling that. But in the middle of a pandemic, when owners aren't hiring anybody, it's a tough time. So you've got to find ways to keep yourself busy. I did some consulting with the team for the NHL draft. I was very prepared for it. And then something popped up that people were calling me about. I've always been on the other side of the camera where you're being interviewed, sort of like this kind of stuff, Robbie. And then all of a sudden I get a call from Elliot Friedman, and he said, listen, would you like to do come and be a guest on the NHL Sportsnet draft? And I was like, oh man, here I'm so if I do this, people are going to think I'm an actor and that I've sold out. But it was
for years, people have been telling me you got a face for radio.
Well, I know, I'm same thing. And sure enough, I go in the entire, like, it's makeup and it's earpieces, and I'm like this. Like, if I tell a story, it's usually with a beer and there's no time limit on it, and I've got an earpiece in, and a producer's yelling at me, hurry up, tell the Drew Doughty story, but tell it in 30 seconds. And I was just like, and I was literally so frustrated. Here I am thinking, this is supposed to be fun, and I'm losing my mind. And then I went out after, and Berkey and Elliot just said, listen, just be yourself. That's what's going to make this fun. And I laughed it off, went in the next day, and I had a blast with it. And the producers were waiting for me after, and they said, listen, would you come back and do the NHL free agency on the Friday? So I ended up going back, and that was way more. I ended up having my own little
desk. Now you knew what to expect, right?
Oh, exactly. And you could tell stories, and you were not, because really nothing was going on. Like, you've got your two guys up, Elliot Friedman and Chris Johnson are up waiting to break stories, and you're down. Basically, they're in your ear. Okay, tell a story, because nobody's being signed.
Fill some space. Yeah, what do you got for us?
You got 3 hours, and then you got David Amber, and it was and again Berkey was there. Who, it was really good for me because I knew all these guys through being on the other side, and they made the transition. Like Elliot Friedman was like, you have no idea the respect I have when I left there, and how good he is, and how natural it is for these guys to conduct those things, and how calming they can be. But long story short, Sportsnet had kind of, in the interim, had talked to me about getting involved a little bit more. That was kind of their last hockey gig. So that's something that I've met with some teams through the Zoom process. It's about getting back in from the hockey side, which is something that really is my passion to do. But the Sportsnet stuff's fun. So I've kind of bouncing around the thoughts of maybe doing a little bit of Sportsnet analyst stuff until the proper hockey situation comes along. And who knows, maybe you do fall in love with that side of it. But as for now, it was more of a enjoyable blip of the memory bank.
Well, listen, a bunch of us were watching you, and I thought you did a great job. You look natural. If there was any sweat going on. It wasn't visible. And I'll tell you, you handled a couple of situations where they threw it up to you, especially that one with the Russian kid.
The Russian
like,
player.
Hey, Mike, what do you got? And you're like,
I got crickets. I got nothing. I got nothing. And it was so funny because they knew ahead of time that LA had shut off all my notes, right? So I told them in the first round, I'm going to be gold because I know all the top guys. So figure out. So as soon as Columbus takes this guy, Shimikov, now I know him like he's my son. Nobody knows him. And Sam
went way off the list.
Sam Cosentino literally and just launches it up top, just throws it right at mine, Elliot Friedman. So everybody's now looking at me, and I'm like, and I'm flipping through my notes, and then all of a sudden Christian Rutu, who was my European scout in LA, he's snapshotting all my notes because he can access my
that's awesome.
stuff. So he's throwing me, he goes, Mike, you like this guy, you like this guy, and I'm like, okay. But it was just such a, and then I immediately told the story. This is exactly like if you're sitting at a draft table. And this guy's name comes up and you don't have him on your list and your general manager looks at you like, are you kidding me? You're going to lose your job. Who is this guy? You're not ready. You're not prepared. And Dean Lombardi, we had a couple of those. So I immediately went to that scenario. And by the time I knew this guy inside and out, by the time the show was over, and they were just having too much fun with it. And I thought it was odd. Like, I thought initially that it would look, you know what, this is going to look really good. And then Elliot was like, that was the best part of the show. Like, we got so many positive hits because it was so natural. And you're supposed to have all these. And then I'm calling, like, Brad Treliving traded back 3 times to get a guy he really wanted. So here's Columbus that's got no pick to the 4th round, and they had every chance to do the exact same thing, and they pull this guy out of the Stars. And I guess he's a good player. It'll be like, again, when I was a part of the Wayne Simmons draft, everybody says they didn't know him, and then if he turns out, everybody's going to go, that's where I had him. That's exactly where I had him. Love the kid. But anyways, it was a great story. It'll move on. I know I look forward to my next trip to Russia because I will meet this kid. I'll put his picture in my wallet and we'll grow from there. But it was certainly, they said that was,
you know what? That had to be one of the best saves ever. And you know what? I know Sammy Cause. We went to grade school. Our dads know each other. And I saw him lob that up and I was just like, and the look on your face when you caught that was like, fuck, what do I do with this now?
Well, exactly. I mean, I was going to swear, and then I looked down at Sammy, I think, and said, hey, Sammy, what does your parents do for a living or something? Just like, because they're every question these guys had, like Berkey was talking like, he's mom fishes, his dad fishes, and everybody. And now they got this guy, and they're all laughing because they've thrown it up to the expert, and he's got no clue this guy is. And it was just, anyway. And Sammy was literally, genuinely, because he's such a pro, he was devastated after. And I had to tell, like, they had to go down and resuscitate him because he's like, I can't believe I did that to Fuchs. And I'm like, Sammy, that was awesome. That was awesome. But it was pretty good. So
you handled it like a KG vet there. So
we've had numerous.
Going back onto one of your stories was awesome, and then having Rutu there to back you up and throw some notes at you. You know, you owe him a steak dinner and a beer for sure, huh?
Maybe 2 steaks with him.
That's awesome, man. What a great experience, though, right? So, I mean, you know, here's an opportunity where you get probably the worst news of your life. You get an opportunity like this, and this is, you know, kind of what I talk about. One door closes and another one opens, and it's all how you look at these opportunities and how you compartmentalize them yourself. You can take it and you can go, woe is me, you know, fuck, this sucks, or you can go, hey, you know what? Okay, this is happening for a reason, and it's happening because there's other things that are making room in my life right now. Right. And now this presents itself. You go on there, you have a little bit of fun. Yeah, you're sweating it because you don't know, but the second time around, you got this and you handle it like a pro, Mike. I mean, you just got to go and have fun with these situations.
Well, I appreciate it. And I think that's why the guy said it was like the producers, like it was so natural.
Yeah.
There was no BS. You didn't flag it. And that's what we needed. He goes, we need more of that because there's a lot of guys that are so scripted and they're like cardboard structures up there to go up and have some fun with it. And they knew I was going to have some fun with it. They just had to, like the one thing I've really had to be careful of is swearing because we do tend to, like you and I sitting on a plane is very, and you're still in that element where you can do that because you're a motivator and stuff, but I've got to reel that back in when I'm on. And I guess I dropped an F-bomb on the fan the other day, which I was totally oblivious to. But it's like, as soon as you get it, you know, it called me, my mom, she goes, you just swore. I'm
Listen,
And
if anybody calls you out and your mom calls you out, you just go,
I did
okay,
it.
Ma, you got me.
I had to use it wasn't fake news. I had to use the empirical evidence, and I went back and heard it. I did slide a one syllable in there and got it out of the way. But it's true though, when you just go back about how your worst day of your life. My God, I mean, I've worked in the National Hockey League for 13 years, and I got teams calling me to get back in it. And I mean, so if that's the worst day of my life, I mean, I was reading you look at what you went through. You know, you almost lost your life. You know, I've got this little girl, Grace Bowen, who died of cancer. She's all over my Facebook. And every time I feel sorry for myself about something like that, you know, after the career I've had, and it's still going to continue on, it just puts reality of what a real bad day is, what a real bad day is in your life. I mean, I'm fortunate enough. I still had through this, you know, I could sit here for 4 months. I basically got time back with my kids that I was 13 years of travel, and my mom and dad, I've still got them in my life. We just reconnected at another level. So, and along with my sister. So you take a bad situation, and then, I mean, thank God had a friend step up for me, and he allowed me to quarantine at his house. I had no idea how much cake this guy made, but the house I'm in has its own gym. It has like a 30 a wine cellar that's got stuff. I've been Googling the stuff that I could just steal all his wine and retire. But so when you have a friend that steps up out of the blue, Blair MacArthur through Quinn Moyer, and just said, "Hey, I got an empty house. Do your quarantine there, and I'm still here." I'm kind of like Kato Kaelin. I call him, I'm still here, but it's empty. And he has never once, he understands what I'm going through. There's a bedroom for each one of my daughters. And it just, again, shows that when you surround yourself with people that really care, you get through stuff like this, right?
You know what? So the universe has a way of providing, you know, and you're right. If you go through your life and you're a good person and you're doing the right things, you know who the people are that got your back at the end of the day. You know, and they step up in those times. And I've seen that myself too, you know.
And I went through, and Robbie, the funny thing is, because, you know, we see each other at the airport and stuff the other day. There's guys, like, I know there's guys that, you know, from when we grew up and played, that they're like, what happened? How did he get that? Like, you know, and they're envious. Some of them are jealous, or Futa, whatever. Futa is always a kiss ass. You don't get jobs like this by doing that. You have to have the substance. Just the fact that I guess my personality, I mean, I was captain of almost every team I played on, not because I was the best player, but I think it was because the way I had this ability, and it's a genuine one, it's through my parents, to bring people together, the same kind of leadership that you had. It doesn't come far. I mean, I know the guy who has the same birthday as me is your dad. Okay, there's certain.
We're going to get into that,
No, but there's certain fathers that, you know, like, I know the kind of leader my dad was, and I know from growing up, the presence that your dad had in a rink was beyond words. So that stuff is, you're very proud, that wears off on you, and you have that ability. That I took a lot of shortcuts as a player, and when that little cracked open the door again for me to get through in management, I just knocked it down. Like, I was knocking it down. I was not going to take another shortcut. And I realized, because the equivalent of my ice hockey career was a Bremerhaven Division I or Denmark Division I championship, I didn't have an NHL career to go back on. So I had to outwork all these guys to have any chance of succeeding at what I did. And that's kind of what spurred on to where, you know, how things got going for me.
But you saw an opportunity. Look at, hey, number one, your career is nothing to sneeze at. You got paid to play. There's a lot of kids that don't get paid to play, right? Yeah. You know, and you know, I went through the same thing. What did I have? I went to an NHL camp. I played a couple exhibition games, and I kicked around the minor leagues as a quasi fighter. Not exactly an ideal professional hockey career. But I look back on all of these things now, and I go, okay, they shaped who I became, right? And they opened up other doors for me later. And now it's an opportunity. Like, hey, I'm coming back hat in hand from a game that I walked away from 25 years ago, and I hated it. You know, and I get an opportunity now to come at it from a different perspective, not from a successful guy that made $1 gazillion playing in the NHL, but coming back saying, hey, you know what? I now realize all of the problems or the issues and the finger pointing that I did were my own. And if I can help some young guy avoid that minefield and make better decisions and not blame others for their shortcomings or their lack of success, but own it, and then also give them some building blocks to prepare for when the game ends, because it ends, and they have to go on and do something else. They're not sitting there, and I'm sure you know a bunch of guys wake up the next day and go, the fuck do I do now?
Yeah. Well,
You know,
that's that kind of attitude. The one thing you said is you can just feel it in the way you talk when you talk to me about your project. Okay. How much fun and how much, I mean, you've got a great lady in your life. You're at a great place in your life, but you're excited about your project. Right. And that's the thing. Every day, one thing in my, I woke up just, I'm in the National Hockey League, just can't wait. Like whether you're like numb, like when you're boarding that private jet, you're every day. It never got old. It was like, it'd be like, but I mean, I had to realize that I can't go into these things, like into these meetings of guys I used to collect their hockey cards and sit here and roll over. Right. I got to do my job. And all of a sudden I became the quote unquote boss or the leader of that group. And once again, I had to lay a track record down for them to take a look at it and go, wow, I mean, I'm going to learn a lot from this guy on this side of the game, the management side, about what he brought to the table. And the guys whose lives, because he was involved at a young age, that are succeeding, that come back and speak highly of you, it just changes your life. And it allows you to think that anything's achievable, right? Anything's achievable.
Oh, for sure, Mike. And listen, so talk a little bit about that transformation, right? Because, you know, we go back to playing junior against each other, right? And, you know, and we didn't play on the same team, but we played against each other. And, you know, and then your career started, you know, you went down, you went to York, you went to Europe, you started to follow the player path, and then that changed. Talk a little bit about that. Share how that happened.
It's funny, Robbie, because I was captain of Henry Carr Crusaders, and I was supposed to go to Yale, right? I got in academically, and infamous, they call it, Dan Cameron calls it the shot heard around the world. I scored it in my own net intentionally, and it was I was called for making a travesty of hockey and basically I was given a lifetime ban, and Cameron was given a lifetime ban. I was reinstated 3 hours later and voted most valuable player, most gentlemanly player. And Dan was, they were just looking for somebody to get Dan.
I know that story.
Okay. So anyway, I lost my scholarship. It ended up being that I go to York, we win a national championship. My dad says, do me a favor, get your teaching degree before you go off on your little, you know, your gallivant, because he knew I was going to take a shot at minor pro. And I got my teaching degree. Ended up James Richmond, a good friend of both of ours, who was really one of my idols growing up, because Captain Henry Carr, which he would love to hear that.
Oh my God, I was going to say, if he's listening to this, his head just got really big.
Well, I'm not even going to go there. Not even going to go there.
JR, you know we love you, pal.
Well, JR knows what I think of him. And he brought me over. He brought me to Europe. And I was kind of like, he was my coach too. So there was nothing like, there was a little thing we joked about is James, the coach that was there, got fired about 3 hours after JR arrived, and he became the coach. And so there's nothing like having your coach bang skate. Yep. Like JR just go out to center with his whistle on and then bang. And then he's my centerman too. So I'd be like, and then we were living together. So it was like, we had the most incredible time. We had the most incredible time in Europe. And then I ended up signing a contract to go back to Denmark, and we won the Danish championship. And I was going back to play again in Germany, and I blew my shoulder out. And I got a call at the time, as fate would have it, my old principal had left a note at St. Mike's, who was our arch rival, and said, listen, he was killed in a car accident. I had put one of my national championship rings in his casket. His name was Father Ted McLean. And he left a note saying, if Mike Futa ever comes back to St. Mike's, hire him. And they brought me in. Peter Miller from Henry Carr brought me in. And it was like bringing in a Henry Carr guy into St. Mike's. It was like they were looking for the Lubitsch brothers. Everybody was sweating hard. Everybody was terrified. So I go in and I said, I'll stay, but I just want to coach your team. I don't want to teach. And it was probably a bit of a ballsy call, but I want to coach. I don't want to teach. And you've got to match, which wasn't great. I think it was like 65,000 I was making in Europe. You've got to match my teaching salary with a coaching salary, which at the time, like, I think Frank Carnevale had a heart attack because Tier 2 coaches weren't supposed to make that kind of money, but everybody just heard, you're getting paid what to coach Tier 2? And I went, no, it's part of it.
You know what? You stepped up and you asked. If you don't ask, you don't know.
No. Right. And it worked out. We had a great year. I had a bunch of guys like Rob Davison. We did very well at St. Mike's, and then they flipped the team over to an OHL team, and they transferred me over. Like I just recruited Mike Camilleri. So at the time I was bummed that I ended up going in the OHL as an assistant coach with Mark Napier. Napes moved up. All of a sudden, I'm 27 years old, and I'm a head coach of the St. Mike's Majors and an expansion team. We're getting outshot about 65-10 every night. I'm in the middle of the bench, like I'm like, this could be. Here I am thinking I'm going to be the next Scotty Bowman, and I'm going to be fired by the time I'm 27 and a half. Yeah. But it was a great experience. And I mean, Mark Osborne comes on board, and I learned so much from him as a coach and a person. And then I ended up getting fired, and it was like, oh, but I put in the time that the people around the league knew how hard I'd worked. So immediately, like Bert Templeton and Brian Kilray started to call me to come on board as an assistant. And I get hired by the Oshawa Generals in an assistant's role. And we still here?
Yep.
Yeah, I lost you, but so I end up going back, and
I got you.
Okay, as long as you have me, that's all that matters. I lost you. But so I get this opportunity in Oshawa as assistant coach, assistant general manager. I realized right then, after watching George Burnett run a practice, that I am miles away from being a first-rate, right? Be ready as a realistic head coach. He starts to slide me more to the management side. Sherry Basson comes in, and all of a sudden these guys are like, Futs, you're really more built for the management side. Other teams started to call about me coming back in a head coaching position. And I literally was like, I really think I'm a coach. And they're like, well, we're telling you right now, you're management. And if an opportunity comes like that, you got to jump at it. So the Owen Sound situation comes up. I'm running all the under 17 programs by then. So I've got like coaching Mike Richards and Corey Perry, and the list is like, and they're like, you've got insider trading facts on these. And I go up, Owen Sound offers me the job. At the time, they were the doormat of the OHL. Nobody wanted to play there. But it was a chance for me to just embrace it, bring my own people in, and start my own culture. And I mean, I started off by, I ended up bringing in Mark Giordano, who they'd already started the process through Frank Carnevale. And I mean, Peter Mavroudis brought me to watch him play. And you know these names, holy smokes. Oh, like Peter Mavroudis brings me to the Giordano house after I watch him, and then the rest is history. I pull him out of it. He gave up his scholarship. He comes in as an undrafted kid. As a 19-year-old, ends up being the OHL Defenseman of the Year, still never drafted. And now you know where he's obviously he's captain of the Calgary Flames. Yeah. Brought in the first player I ever drafted. They couldn't get any Americans to come, so I ended up bringing in Bobby Ryan, who at the time was ranked first overall, but he had a scholarship to Michigan, so I had to knock down some walls to get him there. Hired a coach, Mike Stuthers, who ended up being winner. So by the end of it, I've got Bobby Ryan, who goes number 2 overall to Sidney Crosby. I got Andre Secura, Paul Bissonnette, Brad Richardson's up there. We drafted Joey Hish. The list starts to, it was unbelievable, the guys that we had. And now we were ranked number 2 in Canada. The program had gained, we were on the map, and it was one of the most gratifying things because everybody said it couldn't be done. And then all of a sudden I bring in Trevor Lewis, and that opens up a door where Dean Lombardi, Trevor Lewis is now the first round pick of the Los Angeles Kings, and Dean Lombardi and Ron Hextall come up, and Ron Hextall still says it all happened at Montana's. They put Ron Hextall, who I was terrified of because I had seen his. All I saw him.
You're not the only guy. There's a lot of guys that were terrified of him.
Yeah, I didn't want to. I had that dream of him, that Ron Hextall, when Chris Chelios, when he came storming out and almost two-handed, and I'm sitting across from this perfect gentleman waiting for that side to rear its head. And he and Dean Lombardi said, "Listen, we want to fly you down to Los Angeles." And I was married. I had 3 beautiful kids. Owen Sound was home. The program was in a great spot, and I ended up going down. They offered me something that I didn't think was fair at the time. My wife at the time, who's now my ex-wife, she was really excited about the opportunity, and I ended up taking the job as director of amateur scouting. And I guess the rest is it went very well. I was hired 3 weeks before the draft, and the first kid that I was only responsible for kids from Ontario in that first draft, and they didn't have Wayne Simmons on their list. So Dean asked me to go into the group and just say, okay, what's going on here? Mike Futa's got this guy at number 2 on his list overall, and you guys don't even have him on your list. And he basically said to them, he thinks you guys are fucking idiots. Which I almost died, because here I'm meeting all these guys, and I'm like, guys, I didn't actually say that. That's Dean. Yeah. That's word for word what he said. Oh, and then he just closed the door and goes, well, figure it out. So by the end of it, got Wayne Simmons at like 10th overall in the first round. And then Dean says, well, where are we going to take this guy? I mean, and I said, well, nobody's really even called me about him. so we can take him in like the 6th or 7th. Dean Lombardi just loses his mind on me. He goes, well, I knew I shouldn't have hired you, you idiot. He goes, whatever. He called me a hump or something like that. And then he said,
No way.
oh yeah. He goes, I brought you in, you proved your point, and now you're going to try and hide and not take the kid where he belongs. And I'm like, okay. So we ended up having a 1st round pick, and then we had 2 2nd round picks. So Wayne Simmons is calling me going, he thinks I've deserted him. He goes, thanks for bringing me to Owen Sound and deserting me, Futs. Now, what am I going to do now? You've left. And I said, well, I'll try and invite you as a tryout. I'll try and get you a tryout in the NHL. And he's just livid with me, but I can't tell him what's going on. So that draft day rolls around, and here's the 2nd round, and Dean Lombardi just looks at me, and they push the microphone in front of me, and I'm like, in the 2nd round, the Los Angeles Kings take Wayne Simmons. You could have heard a pin drop. My phone, like Steve Spott, these guys are calling me saying, I hope you didn't sell your house no one sound. You're going to be fired in the next 10. So your boys are your
Nothing
boys.
Like a little positive reinforcement from your buddies.
Thanks, boy. Pete DeBoer is the only guy that said, you know what, Futs, that's a great pick. And I was like, well, thanks, Pete, because everybody else is just killing me here. Yeah. But so Simmer comes in. First of all, Simmer, I get told the story that Simmer almost drove off the highway because he was, I guess, going to the gym because he'd been told by me that he wasn't getting drafted. And here he gets drafted in the 2nd round, and he goes down and almost makes the team in his 1st year. And he ends up never playing a game in the minors. I mean, he ends up, he got 860 games under his belt, or 920 or something. And now he's a Toronto Maple Leaf. But I mean, it's a great story. And even when he called me, like he did his call, and he called me the morning of when I was doing the Sportsnet thing. And he said, well, if you want to break the story, Futs, I'm going to play for the Leafs. And I'm like, no, I don't break stories. I mean, so he worked it out with Anthony Stewart. I said, but I am proud of you. And I know this is his dream. He was offered more money to play in different places, but I mean, it's such an incredible story for me because of how far we've come together. And I mean, and those are guys that just make you look great because they're just took a chance, first class.
Right? I mean, you saw something in these guys that maybe nobody else did. You took a chance, you put your balls on the line, you put them out there, and they delivered.
Well, and that's what you say, Rob, because if you know someone's never going to let you down with their effort, and they're never going to cheat. Like we talk about the guys that the old term was the Eddie Haskell, the guys that when the coach walks by, they're doing extra reps and their shirts off and they're throwing. And as soon as the coach leaves, they start taking shortcuts. And then there's guys that work harder when the coach and the trainer isn't in the room. And those are the guys, like that was the way Mark Giordano was. That was the way Wayne Simmons was. So I knew that if I was going to put my career on the line or name on the line for them, if we failed, we were going to fail together because we were going to die on the tracks trying to get there. They were never going to let me down with their effort. They're never going to let me down with their actions. And then they just took it to another level, which it's them doing the work.
You make a great point there, Mike. It's just, I just want to, reinforce this for any of the young guys that are listening. What Mike's just saying there is, hey guys, it's not what you do when people are watching. It's what you do when no one is watching, when it's just you, and you're trying to make that, you're making yourself better, not trying to make yourself look better. Right. And those things don't go unnoticed, right? The cream rises to the top.
Yeah. That's for me was the biggest difference between even the certain players. And I think it's probably one of the biggest strengths I have in the industry is when I sit down across from somebody, I can I might not let them know, but I can really tell whether they're full of it or whether they're telling you the truth. I mean, I had one player, I can't give his name because but I mean, he's an incredible, he's turned out to be a great player, played for the Leafs, but I knew that this kid smoked pot, right? And I mean, God, it wasn't, but I wanted to get this kid to come in. I had heard it was a bit of an issue in junior, and I wanted this kid to come in and tell me the truth. Yeah. And I brought him in front of Dean Lombardi, and I asked him the question. It's like, I already knew the answer. And he said, Futs, I swear to God, I've never smoked pot in my life. And I just said, okay, you're going to have to leave. I wish you best of luck wherever you're drafted. I said, we can't work together if you can't tell me the truth. Yeah. At this stage, if I can't believe in you now, and he got up and he couldn't believe that because we've known each other, I'd coached him, and then there's a knock on the door like 15 minutes later, and I open the door, I go, hey, And he goes, I smoke weed. I smoke pot.
Broke him down. You
And I
broke
was
him
like,
down.
there we go. But I mean, it's like, it wasn't like I didn't exactly Tom Cruise, Jack Nicholson him, but all I wanted to say to him was, hey, there's a lot of kids in the draft that I assume that smoke pot, but be honest. Don't lie to us. So Dean said, you're back in the list, kid. You're back in the list. You got to go. It's not, we obviously got to make sure that he's not Cheech and Chong or anything like that. But we also wanted, all we wanted to do was, you're telling us the truth. You're not going to lie to us about what you do with your, because it's too important. We need you to be, we need to have the real deal. And it's incredible the amount of stories you have that way with but again, it's the kids that do the real work that are just never gonna. I mean, there was a kid, Curtis McDermott, that his dad was my owner, and I mean, he's now, if it was a throwback into the 70s, he'd be making millions. He's probably as tough as Ryan Reeves. He's like 6'4", 255 pounds with like 7% body fat, but he's made himself into a guy that can actually play as a 6 now. But I mean, I called him and I said, Jeremy, I'll draft you with the 7th pick, with the last pick in the 7th round. But I'd really like to use it on somebody else. But if you trust me, I'll bring you to camp. And if you're as good as anybody else, we'll sign you right there. And he just looked at me and goes, Futa, I trust you. Yeah. So he comes into training camp. He was terrible, like terrible. But I called Dean Lombardi and I said, you wouldn't believe this kid sacrificed being drafted in the NHL because he believed in us. And I said, I guarantee you this kid will not make us look bad. And at worst, he's going to kill guys. He's like the Undertaker. And Dean goes, I can't believe we're going to sign this kid. Like, he was playing junior B and no one sound at the time, but we signed him. And then I think he's played 200 games in the NHL. Like, it's unbelievable. And it's That's awesome. First of all, he comes in and the first, you only had one chance to make a good first impression.
That's it.
He wins the fitness testing in, like, his rookie camp fitness tests were comparable to the NHL guys. So you tell me that's what you make the first impression you make when they don't, like, the NHL coach at your first camp, when he picks up the fitness test, doesn't go, when he looks at the top, he's really pissed at the guy that gets first overall. If your first overall pick is at the bottom of the list, he's got a problem. It makes us, but it tells the guy, if you've got guys that have risen up that continually, like Alec Martinez and Trevor Lewis, every year we're at the top of our fitness test, the coaches all of a sudden immediately gain those players' trust. And they're not your superstar players, so to speak, but right away you've got your coach's trust because you've superseded everybody else with your fitness tests. And that's such a big thing. That's why every stone unturned to leave everything on the table is the only way you're going to be able to really achieve the ultimate goal.
It's amazing. There's so many guys that you don't hear about because you don't know the behind the scenes stories like that, right? And it's so important for these young guys to make sure that they become rounded individuals and players, right? So it's not just what they do on the ice. It's not the stat sheet. It's not how many goals and assists. It's what are those efforts like off the ice? What's your training like? Talk a little bit, Mike, at that level, how impactful is something like, mindset training? Is that something that you guys did at all? Was there coaches, like, did guys have individual support? What were their routines and their habits like, so that, a lot of times I'll refer to that Michael Jordan video where he was just so present. Now he's a, phenomenally unique individual when it comes to that, but he was able to just put himself into such a moment and take something that he would use to drive him to perfection. Is that something you saw in the game?
It's huge, but not enough. More now.
Yeah.
Like, that's like when you called me about your stuff. We brought it in about 3-4 years ago. Dean Lombardi, and this is no knock on Dean. Dean was he felt he was our general manager at the time, and he felt he basically took on the role of team psychologist. He wanted, if players had problems, he wanted them to bring it to him and his coaching staff, and he'd deal with it. He knew all their families, and Daryl Sutter was very similar. Whereas somebody like Brian Burke, I don't know her name offhand, but he had somebody all the time, like from Bobby Ryan's. Everybody's heard the Bobby Ryan story. When we had Bobby, and he credits her with keeping him alive. She would come in and deal with him. She was with the Anaheim Ducks and dealt with those things on a daily basis, the players' mindsets, and just thinking how huge that is to be in the right frame of mind. And you think because these guys are great players that they all have incredible amounts of confidence, but some of them, the depression and lack of confidence they have, I mean, it's the same thing. They're human beings. And if they feel they're failing and they feel it slipping away, now in some cases they've got more money to cause problems. It's, if your things are slipping away and you have access to millions of dollars to put the wrong things in your body, it could snowball in a hurry. And I think having somebody in that capacity is huge, like with the areas that you're trying to look at now, because I think it helps a lot more the elite athlete. But if you don't deal with it at a younger age now, and see the importance of the focus and the mental toughness, it might close the door on ever getting the chance to be there. And whether it's role acceptance, like you see, like not all these guys that scored 40, 50 goals in Pee Wee and Bantam, a lot of them are on checking lines. Like look at Alan McCauley. Alan McCauley won the Canadian Hockey Player of the Year 2 years and went down in the NHL as one of the best defensive centers. He put up very few numbers. Mark Osborne, these guys were junior superstars that ended up being, they bought into roles. They bought into roles. And there's certain guys that just can never get there because they refuse to, I won't give names, guys that just always looked at their, and I say, I'm a goal scorer. Like, you're misusing me. While you're sitting there complaining and pouting in the corner, somebody's going to accept the role and take your job. So, but again, every capacity of it is so there. It's like no stone unturned. I mean, the mental side of it, the physical side of it, the nutrition side of it, everything. Sometimes you almost think maybe it's a little overkill, but it's not. Like we had some kids after our second cup get themselves into trouble with, they got arrested. Okay. We had a kid charged with domestic violence. Slav Voyanov, Mike Richards had a problem with Oxycontin. Jarrett Stoll had some issues in Las Vegas. And all of a sudden we're like the bad boys. And Dean hired his name was Brett Myers, who was a lifelong fighter in the league who'd been like 10, 12 years sober. Like his story is frightening, frightening. And now he was just brought in as a counselor to just, if guys had things on their mind, they needed to talk about it regularly for stress that, he had an office downstairs. So now it was, you don't have to go to the coach. And Mizey had signed a contract that he couldn't bring any problem to management or the coaching staff without the player's permission. So it wasn't a leaky, nobody looked at him as the snitch, right?
Right.
So
you gotta have that trust, right?
100%. If you blow that, even with one player and it gets out, you're done. You're done because that whole thing is to have that confidence that when you're at a moment of weakness and you're sharing a weakness, that it's not going to get exposed.
Mike, you use the word mental toughness. How do you think the players today, where is their mental toughness versus, and I hate to use the old school guys like when we were, at our prime, is there a difference? What's the, what do you see from your end at the highest levels? Well, because I've heard different people say that the kids today are softer, the young guys are softer, and you've talked about a couple of examples, and I hate to use generalities, but I think that there's been some generational change over the last.
That's it. I mean, I think when guys sit and say the players were so much better back then, I think they're full of it. Like these kids now are just superior athletes.
Oh, talent-wise, no question.
But that's where I draw that. But I do think the one area that has extreme amount of validity to it is the lack of mental toughness. Whether kids have had age, like it absolutely drives me crazy when a kid fires his agent before he's played a game in pro, or because he didn't get drafted where he thought he was going to get drafted, or like stuff like that, or the lack of accountability. And now these kids are getting agents when they're like coming out of Pee Wee and stuff. So ridiculous. And they're spoiled. I mean, and these agents are just doing their job. They've got to recruit them. So, I mean, when you're 12 years old or 13 years old and your parents are sitting across from Bobby Orr, who I still get numb when I talk to him,
sure,
become a good friend. But I mean, you've got these kids are getting a silver spoon, and they have to get it till the agent has to kick them in the ass. And usually the agent goes to the organization. The one thing I love about the NHL, like I had to deal with agents in junior, because you'd get a lot of people at mass calling in about billet situations or school, and then it immediately turns to ice time, which you try and keep that away from the coach. But you actually have made a commitment to a young kid that you're going to make his family environment better. So I think you do owe him in the junior level that more airtime on ice time in situations like that, especially if you've made those promises through recruitment. But I think part of the process for me is to also let those kids know, especially now, having been in that other chair, if you think this is going to hold up in the National Hockey League, you don't want the reputation of a person who gets silver spooned all the way. And the first time that you get, you don't get to play with who you want in the National Hockey League, you're just going to get sent to the minors. Yeah. Like they tell the story. I mean, Jonathan Quick hates the story, but Jonathan Quick, who at the time, Jonathan Bernier was supposed to be our goaltender, and Jonathan Quick slept in his alarm clock, and he was sent right to the East. They sent him right past the American League to the East Coast. Right? Yeah. Now, John Quick, Conn Smythe Trophy winner, arguably one of the best American goalies in history, but that's the accountability level at the National Hockey League level that you've got to be accountable. And I think some of this mental toughness, first of all, I've got to watch how I say this.
Yeah.
I completely understand the diversity factor. There's no place for that. But now if a coach yells at a player, you got to be careful what you say. There's no place you hear about these coaches that kick players on the bench. That was, you can say, you've probably got another podcast we could do on coaches that did the wrong thing, said the wrong thing, physically and verbal abuse, mental abuse. Yeah. And that's there's no place for that anymore. But you have to be able to hold somebody accountable. Yeah. And if you yell at somebody now, you almost have to articulate your anger in such a way that you're not offensive, prone to a lawsuit or you know what I mean? And that to me
is that part of it has got to be like just a slippery slope sometime, because you want to assert your rules or your level of concern to them, and you want them to know that it's urgent and this has to be done, but you can't do it in the way that our coaches used to yell at us, and we were just like, okay, coach, and get out there, Well,
I think there's got to be a fine blend of somebody that can hold someone accountable, yell at them, love them, talk them up when they're down. And that's why, I think that's why coaches are getting, but you see guys like when I hear stuff, like the way like a Babcock talks to players and stuff like that. And I'll give you a perfect example, and I love him. I've become much better friends with him. Daryl Sutter, who, my name's on the Stanley Cup twice because of Daryl Sutter and what he did for our group coming in. Sure. But I'll tell you a story about, I was in charge with Luke Robitaille. We were playing an outdoor game against San Jose, and it's something you actually sign a waiver for these outdoor games now and I guess Bruce Boudreau was the first to do it, but they mic your coach, right? And you get the backstage pass to watch the coach, whether he's laughing or joking or whether he's losing his marbles at NHL. And it's pretty interesting TV. The Boudreau one where he swearing his head off. But so Daryl Sutter went in the first day and he was mic'd up. And Luke Robitaille asked me to come into his office. He goes, "Okay, Futs, we got to edit Daryl today." And so we plugged in Daryl, and it was like watching, I don't know whether you could. We were looking at the screen, and then Luke first was like, "Futs, did he just say that? Was that bad?" And I'm like, "Oh."
How long a delay you got? Was it live or was it fully editable?
We could have put. Well, by the end of it, we said, "Well, what can we use?" And I said, "Well, right after he says, okay, guys, everything after that we can't use."
Great game.
There's nothing. In other words, that never came up. But it was like, and then Daryl, of course, Daryl wants to win the outdoor game. He doesn't care about the contract or anything like that. Sure. So they found out. And I had to kind of like, well, Daryl, you gotta do this, could you maybe tone it down? And I get like, yeah, fuck. Yeah, right, Futs, I'm toning it down. By the way, get out of my office. Yeah. Don't let the door hit it. So Daryl somehow convinces everybody to cut all the microphones on him and around the bench as we're heading out. So they get to the bench and he's cut every microphone. So now ESPN or whatever it is losing their mind, or it's NBC, because there's a contract and they've got no volume for anything. So they had to bring our assistant trainer off and mic him like he's a like an undercover guy like Donnie Brasco, and then have him. You couldn't tell Daryl.
Center pat him down before he talked to him.
But Daryl didn't know. But he, I guess when they told the story after, Daryl laughed so hard because he almost told him to get off the bench because he had to. Every time Daryl walked down the bench, like Daryl liked his room in the bench.
Like his shadow right there.
Yeah, he had to shimmy him down the bench and try and catch some things Daryl was saying with the microphone for the sake of the contract. And then he'd shimmy back down the bench, shimmy down the bench. And I think there's one point he finally said, "Will you get away from me for like, leave me alone. Like I'm trying to coach here." And I was like, "Oh, sorry, coach." But it was a great way to get around it. But again,
that's awesome, man.
You talk about it. There's guys at the time that were like, God, we got Daryl Sutter. We've had enough of this. It's getting too much. We've won 2 cups. He's still on our backs. And then 4 months after Daryl was gone, they're like, God, we missed that. We needed that. Yeah. We needed that accountability. That's what we needed. So, I mean, there are certain guys I'm sure he crossed the line and don't feel the same with, but 95% of the guys know that without that push to get us over the top, we wouldn't have won those cups. And I think in the first cup, Daryl Sutter basically, and you think of the names we had on that team, probably 9 or 10 NHL captains, but Daryl Sutter, I felt, was the captain of that team pulling it together. And he certainly didn't.
Like that'll bring everybody together, eh?
And he certainly didn't do it with whatever Disney language and.
Yeah, no. Well, I think there's got to be some level of accountability and integrity from the players as well. We can't become, these marshmallow players that everybody is so soft. At some point, you're playing a professional sport. You're getting paid a lot of dollars to do it. Let's man up a little bit. And maybe I'm not using the right term. I don't know. No, it's my podcast. I can say whatever the fuck I want. So
exactly what you got to be careful with the man up.
Yeah. Well.
But it does work. But it's, what, when you're talking about we're talking about our team and they're all males in this case, so they have to man up. But I mean, I think the thing that you bring up that is so critical, like what I would like to list. Somebody was on doing one of these things on sports, and somebody said, "Well, what do you think about this OHL no hitting?" And I said, "Well, I want the list of the guys playing in the OHL that are excited about that, and then I just want to scratch them off the list." Yeah.
You know what? When I heard that, I was talking to JR about it, and he's like, "Oh, geez, they're dropping this bomb. We got to figure out how to play without hitting." I was like, "How do you play hockey at that level without hitting?" And then what does that do to the guys? Like, you got scouts coming to watch the game. They might as well come and watch, pond hockey.
Oh, yeah, that's why I said, just hand me the list. Hand me the list of the players that think this is a good idea, just so I can scratch them off my list and save time, because you have no chance of playing in the National Hockey League if you think that's a good idea. First of all, it's beyond sensical to me, because like if you watch even an NFL game right now, like where you see the greatest, spit and impact is when you're puck protection and they're in the corner when you're on the line holding in that, like if a guy catches a guy with it, nobody hits anymore like that anyways, but if a guy catches somebody with a Wendell Clark hit, he's not giving him COVID. Yeah, right. No, he might give him a concussion, which you don't want to see either. But more of that. That's a bigger concern than COVID. And if you want to do, that's why they're taking headshots out, which I agree with. Yes, they're weeding 100%. Fighting out, which you knew that was going to happen. But taking hitting out, it's
silly. Well, that's a whole other discussion, and we're not going to talk about on this show. But the whole some of these regulations that are being imposed on sports and hockey in particular, and what you can and cannot do because it's physical, and this idea of transmitting the disease through anyways.
Robbie, were you on that team with we put at that club Max. There's a bunch of those teams that came to, and I remember James put this team to. I love telling this because it thinks about no hitting. So they brought me out. I was playing pro in Europe, and I come into the dressing room, and I don't know whether you were on the team, but it was like a who's who of all the best guys playing those Sunday leagues and stuff like that. Everybody had played pro somewhere, but they put me on the fourth line with Eddie Lubicic and Ian Collins. Right. And basically, and Rick Kornacki comes in.
You got Groot and you got Green Mile on one side.
Oh, I think exactly. I look like where his name is, Paulie Dangerously walking a tag team champions. Paulie, whatever the guy, Paul Heyman. And I got the WWE tag team champs on my line. And they're basically talking to us like we're slugs, right? Like you're the fourth line. So, and we're playing against the Chinese national team. And they kind of said, they want to play regular rules, right? And I got so ticked off that we weren't playing that I just looked at Ian and Eddie and I said, I'm going to start running these guys.
Yeah.
And I literally hit 3 kids as hard as you could possibly. Like one was Wendell Clark, like 3 guys like getting carried off.
Yeah.
Now Eddie's giggling and Rick Kornacki is having a heart attack. We've actually got a real coach. He's telling me you can't hit anymore. And I said, oh yeah, watch this. Ian and Eddie started hitting. I said, you think it's bad when you got my 185-pound body? Now you got 265 and 255 guys.
Yeah. We got 2 big boys. Oh my God.
We got in so much trouble. They ran him out of the building, and JR got to play in his first line. He was on the scoring line. But it was so much fun. We had a blast.
JR likes playing on that scoring line. He's a finesse player, you know.
He is the dirtiest finesse player in the game.
Oh my God. I remember playing roller hockey against him. I was down in Miami. He was in Toronto. And I remember chasing him around the rink in Toronto one night, and he was just like, you know, I don't know. I call him lucky. I see those little legs, and I wonder how they can hold him up. And I go, you're lucky those legs can hold that body up. But you know what? What a guy, what a great skater and an athlete.
One of my favorite things I could do for him, because I always thought, how can I repay him for bringing me to Europe? And as much as it ended up not the path I wanted to be on, the right path. So we ended up having a skating coach position come available with the Kings. So I convinced JR, because I knew he did the summer training with the kids, and he has his about 4 or 5 drills that he does. They're pretty basic, but the kids swear by him. I know Tyler Toffoli does. Yeah. So I had him come in, and JR was hired as our skating instructor. I had to let him know that nobody was going to lose their job. Daryl Sutter was going to stick around as the head coach, and that he was just going to be the skating instructor. But JR hates when JR that. I had to tell JR that. But he hates when I do that. But there's a litany of bodies behind him, and that used to be his coach. But the best thing he comes out, the kids loved him, and he was great at it. But I got to show up at his in front of his team in Georgetown, and he didn't know what. I didn't tell him I was flying in, and I got to present him a Stanley Cup ring in front of his team.
How awesome is that?
It was just awesome. Awesome. Because
he's pretty really that lives and breathes the game. Is it not JR?
I think we all do. But there's another level of. I've seen it. A lot of these guys, like they can't stop watching it, right? And it's amazing. And it's amazing how much passion they have for it. That's for sure.
I've gone down and I support JR, and I've gone down to a couple of games and chatted with him after, and he just lives and breathes the game, man. It's amazing. I take my hat off. Kudos to him. I walked away from it and I hated it, and I'm coming back into it, and I'm leaning on guys like you and JR to let me in again.
Trust me, with the attitude and the intensity and the focus you have, it'd be a pleasure. As I said, the doors got open again for me, but and when it does, it'll open for some people like yourself around me that have been so great. And that's what I did. If that's one of the things I'm the most proud of leaving LA, is I think there's 18 guys on that full-time staff that I was responsible for hiring. And and a couple of them, even a couple of people like Ian McClellan, who was my director of scouting and Owen Sound, goes to, I get him some help. He gets hired by the St. Louis Blues. He wins a Stanley Cup. Like it's not just on the ice to be able to have that kind of impact in people's lives. And it's a great feeling. It's an incredible feeling. And once you've won once, you feel like you're never going to win again. You win twice. Now you just can't believe how long ago it seems. And you just want to drive for that next championship, that next opportunity to win a championship. And it's
the most sought after championship trophy in sports. And you got your name on it twice, my friend. How amazing is that?
It's still numbing. I said the first time I saw it,
it was just thinking about it.
It was down low. It was down low, and I was just looking at it, staring at it, like how could that can't be it? Like that must have come in a bowl of cereal, and then they drop it off for you, and you've got it, and it's your day with it, and then it kind of sinks in. And the second time, I think my name's beside Daryl Sutter in the third row, and I'm like, this is so surreal. Yeah. Oh, gee, you saw it there, bud.
Yep. There they are. I was just going to ask you.
There's the crew. There's the crew.
That is.
That's really, you know what? The Angels. But
anybody doesn't know, the Angels. Mike and the Angels.
I will tell you something about my Angels. Is one thing, they know right now that Daddy's not working, and they've had some pretty hilarious things to say about it. And secondly, they also know that Daddy only has 2 Stanley Cups. And being the women that they are, somebody
want one.
somebody says, if you try and pawn off the Calder Cup or the national champion, we each get a Stanley Cup ring, and somebody right now is short. So
Oh my God, what a motivation!
I know they're supportive of me, but the fact that
you got three beautiful young girls there.
Oh, they are incredible.
Beautiful young girls. It's awesome. And you know what? Going back to that again, this is an opportunity that you talked about it early on. You got to spend with your daughters, with your family again. How's mom and dad? How's the health? I know my dad remembers your dad from the old timers and said he was a hell of a player.
Oh.
So
my dad was like, it was funny because growing up,
he said he was one of the toughest guys you knew too.
Oh, he's nasty. Football player, nasty. And it's funny because I clearly am a blend of my parents, because growing up, everybody, you're just like your mom. There you go. You got the cheeks. Everybody loves you. You're always happy. And then when it came to hockey, it just became my dad. And it was the competitive side of it. And I think it was, again, after the first time, I had this thing in my head that it was like, you're always winning. You're always succeeding. Life is easy. And then when I got fired and hit my first roadblock, it was like, okay, what's going on here? Like, how am I going to respond to this? And then I think a lot of my dad kicked in. That don't feel sorry for yourself. Pick it up and get going. And I'll tell you, I mean, he's taking care of a family for a guy that was a phys ed teacher. I mean, he would have played. He was drafted in the CFL, blew his knees out. I mean, he'd come back from Friday night hockey there with stitches and speared, like, hey, I speared our priest, or or speared our priest at Friday night hockey, or Father Love pissed me off, so I chopped him.
It's a different period of time.
Well, it is, but it's so funny. But I mean, the competitiveness that he brought, and I also know that when he says stuff now that annoy me, it's just because he cares so much, and I have to filter it out, because when he calls and says, well, have you heard anything? What's your next stop? It's like, I mean, I get angry because I'm like, Dad, I'll tell you when I've got something, but it's because how much they love me. And I'm so fortunate to have them, both of my, I think about the guys, our friends, like, you look at what, I don't even want to, but if you look at Rob Poza, I mean, this guy's one of my best friends in the world. And this guy's I see what him and that beautiful young daughter of his, and I just brings tears to my eyes and think he doesn't have, how big Sam and his mom were in his life. And he's raising this beautiful angel of his own without his parents. And it's just, to me,
doing an amazing job.
And he's doing an amazing job. So to me, I just look now to think how much enjoy every second of it, because it's just, I'm so blessed. I'm truly blessed. And that's what's been fun about it. I mean, I can go back now and look, like, my mom was truly devastated because she became a part of every one of the players on the Kings knew her. Right. Yeah. And I tell the story, like the Stanley Cup's been at her house. The second year, my wife's pendant, seeing as I didn't have a wife, which I'm surprised she still didn't want. She didn't want.
Been there, Mike. Been there.
I'm surprised she didn't want half the pendant, but I decided that my mom was going to get my Stanley Cup pendant, and she wears it everywhere. And it's like, it's still, but so she lives her life through that whole predicament. And when it happened, she was devastated. Like, she was devastated. Like, she literally went down to the wall, and I've told the story, and she took Rob Blake's jersey off the wall. Like, and she says, I can't have that guy's jersey on the wall. And that's family. That's my mom. That's my mom. And it's not, and I had to say, like, I've told her, because I mean, I've got so much respect for Rob Blake. I don't like the decision he made, but it's just, that's a parent being a parent. And that's the way my parents are. And I look back and I still picture them on the float with the Stanley Cup. And what better, on the ice with me with the Stanley Cup. And I mean, if my sister had been there, it would have been that much better. If the Angels were there, that was just not feasible at the time. But to have your mom and dad on the ice with you, the Stanley Cup's pretty much, it doesn't get any better than that. So it's pretty cool. Great memories that you've built there, Mike. And I'm going to ask you one last question here, because we're closing in, and I know you got a hard stop here. And I ask this of everybody at the end of my interview. If your life was a billboard, man, on the road to life, what would it say? You know what? And I thought about this, because I remember you've mentioned this to me before, and I think there'd be somewhere between anything is achievable and I mean, unfinished business. The next cup's the best. I don't know. Just keep, fight on. You could be, it just never ever give up. Never have somebody tell you. It'd be a long fucking billboard, I'll tell you that. I was going to say, I got to limit it to 15 words, 12 to 15 words. You're gonna it's like a tweet. We're buying a bunch of them here, so. It's a tweet. No, but it's true. It's like one of my biggest flaws, and I don't look at it as a flaw, is somebody told me after the fact, like I never thought that I would end up making the money I made in the National Hockey League. Right. And that's not being braggadocious. It's just, I shook my head. I always say I'd stay in hockey as long as I was making more than I was teaching. Then all of a sudden I was like, holy Christ. Like I remember my dad walked by and he goes, well, I was a pretty good teacher. I'm like, Dad, I don't talk about it, but it was good. But I always laugh because my Stanley Cup party, I kept thinking the first one, this is never going to happen again. You know, watch what you spend. And then I thought about, I mean, and I clearly don't make like these players. And I don't want to talk like I'm making that, but more than I ever thought I'd make. So my second Stanley Cup party, I said mentally, this is what I want to do for my friends and my family, but be smart with the money on it. And that went. I remember getting like I was
got to celebrate and enjoy that moment.
Yeah. Anji Kopitar was sitting. He was having a discussion, and we're at lunch, and he makes I think 11 million a year or something, right? And he's talking about, you know, I spent like 5-6 grand on my day. And I'm like, 5-6 grand? You make 11 million? I spent $25,000 by like 6 in the evening. And I couldn't.
Why did we blow it out?
I said, was I supposed to say that out loud? Like, I just didn't care. I had a private bus for my friends. I had limousines. Quinn Moyer took it to Donnie O'Neill's gravesite. I had it like it was going up in a helicopter. It was everywhere. I had Wendell Clark let me stay at his bar. So, and nobody was paying for everything. And then I saw the bill come in and I'm like, whoa, did that Stanley Cup bonus ever go out the window in a hurry? But it was, I wouldn't change a thing about it.
Yeah.
That's how much fun it was. And again,
you.
it's sure everybody says your wedding's supposed to be the biggest party you have in your life. Well, I can guarantee you the way that one turned out.
Stanley Cup number 2.
These two parties, both these parties. Well, the other one is a gift that keeps on giving because I have to. I'm still paying for the first party, but the Stanley Cup ones are just like. It's just incredible. It's just to be able to share those with friends. And I look at the pictures every time, again, you feel down. I see the pictures and like Hunter, my oldest, said the other day, she goes, Daddy, can you send me more of those pictures? Because I know what happened, but I've got to do a presentation. And she didn't even remember that she took both my Stanley Cup rings to show and tell and passed them around, show and tell. And I was literally like, I had my eyes on these kids because I don't care. There's one little kid. There's one. There's a Mark Etche in every kindergarten class.
And God bless Etche.
God bless Etche. But I remember this kid picking them up and he's staring at me and he goes, "What if I throw these and smash them on the ground and keep all the diamonds?" And I'm like, what's this fucking kid's name?
Have you ever heard of Ed Lubitschek? Because he's going to come knocking on your door.
Oh, but I was laughing. You're like, you're first of all, son, you're going to go right to the principal's office. But it was just amazing. And when Hunter saw these, the rings, it just reminded her of everything. So it was pretty cool stuff.
That's amazing, Mike. Listen, I know.
Can I ask you a question, Robbie?
Yes, absolutely.
What's your billboard?
My billboard. Oh, you turned it around on me. Mine would be, God, I haven't even thought about it myself. My billboard would be, if you get knocked down, get back up again.
Okay. I love it. See, because I love the question. I think it's an amazing question because some stuff you can just go into a story, but that really makes you think.
Yeah.
And that's, and not in a bad way, like, oh man, I got to come up with something floral. It's like, really, what matters the most? Like, my first meal, I was saying it has to be something about my daughters, but no, because it's something that I want my daughters, when I'm gone and I'm off the road, I want them to be able to look at that billboard and follow the same path. Yeah. So great question.
No, and I appreciate you asking me that because you know what, I haven't really thought about it myself. Usually I'm the one asking that question. But I think that's what it would be in my life. I've been knocked down a number of times. I keep getting back up, and I tell people, you're going to have to put me in a box. It's the only way.
I'll tell you, I saw you the other day, and it'd be a big box. Holy smokes. You guys, I said, Posey said, I remember Posey, I said, it's Robbie, and he's got a beautiful girlfriend or fiance on the plane. He's in great shape. He's doing, he's clearly so into his at the time. I think you were on one of your fasts or your certain how much calories you could intake.
That 75 hard program.
Oh yeah, and I'm sitting next to you like I'm trying to you get me a Chardonnay. Get me a Chardonnay, but don't let them see because I really need a drink.
Listen, buddy, I'm never going to not stop wanting to have a drink, and we're going to have to sit down and do this in person and have a beer and catch up.
Absolutely.
This was amazing today, Mike. I would love to be able to have you on again. I think we could fucking chat for hours on different
Absolutely,
stories.
my friend.
And
anytime
I really appreciate you giving me the time here.
Anytime you're talking to friends that are true, genuine people, it makes your day a better day. So I appreciate it, bud.
Listen, I wish you all the best in your future endeavors. God bless the angels and your parents and you. And just have faith, man. Things are going to work out for you. You're a good human being. You just keep that smile and those chubby cheeks going there, buddy. And you're gonna be celebrating Stanley Cup #3.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Robbie. Take care,
Okay.
bud.
Thanks, Mike.